Final hour overdrive continues. Brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Brian Hayes, Jamie Noodles, McLennan, Tradecentre. All day here on TSN Radio. Brought to you by your Ontario Subaru dealers, Subaru Confidence in Motion. We got Mike Johnson coming up. Johnny's take on winners and losers of the day. His take on Vegas. Everyone's talking about Vegas. And their day will come. Their day will come when they are a disaster. I don't know when. Probably not anytime soon. But they will be a mess. And then we'll see what they're made of.
You're right. All the draft picks going out. But I had somebody write us and say, you guys are complaining about Vegas. The Leafs invented Robida Island.
Yes. Yes.
But that was spending cash to make players go away.
That's different. Listen, the Leafs do that too. Don't get me wrong. A lot of teams use long-term IR and owners that are willing to spend money.
Right.
But the Leafs, to my knowledge, have not told, basically wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You're okay, but you're not okay. You're not coming back until game one.
Right.
Which feels like what Vegas does. Felt like what Tampa did.
Right, with Kucherov.
Kucherov, he could have played 2 weeks before that.
Right.
You can't, no one believes, just that day, game one. You
Good
got
to go.
Yeah, now, what a miracle. What a coincidence. But it was you're not coming back because we've spent the money. Get yourself ready.
Right.
To his credit, he did, and he did miss a beat. And Patrick Kane did that in Chicago, same thing.
Yeah, shoulder.
Yeah.
It's funny because I thought about it. You can use, the rules are in place. Now you just find a way if you want to spend money, if you want to do things. I don't know if it's called circumventing. It's just, hey, this is a way to be creative.
And get good players.
Honestly,
I am envious. I'm jealous. There's a part of me that can't believe it's true.
Yeah.
That Vegas has been in the league for 6.5 years.
They keep doing it.
They're the crown jewel of the league. They win all the time. Yeah. They've won a cup. They're in on every big name. It's truly impressive. But
what did you say to start the show? They mocking not mocking. What you had a saying where it's just they've cleaned up the league.
Yeah. Well, they've embarrassed the league at times, and they're lapping the field in a lot of ways. They're lapping the league, and it started again with the expansion draft.
Right.
Where all the other teams thought, well, you got this guy. Yeah, we'll give you this player and that pick so you don't take this guy, thinking we're so smart. Who do you think you are, George McPhee and the Vegas Golden Knights? Meanwhile, McPhee and the Knights are like, that's exactly what we wanted.
Yeah, we'll take that player and that player and that pick
and that prospect, and you think you're actually doing yourself a favor when, in fact, you're doing us a massive favor. And it's just been the most remarkable run. And if you're just tuning in, Vegas Golden Knights acquired Tomas Hertl from San Jose right at the deadline. They acquired Noah Hannafin last night and Anthony Mantha a couple days ago.
Well, also, too, that's a big transaction. You got to go to Hertl. They didn't wake up this morning and go, hey, you want to move your family? You got
I think he had to waive, too.
He has to waive. He's on LTIR. You got to make sure you talk to the doctors. This guy could potentially be coming back this year.
Yeah.
You have to do your due diligence. This might have been in the works for 2 weeks.
Possibly, yeah.
But the fact that it doesn't get leaked out. That's the beauty of it, too.
It's incredible. Yeah, no, listen, Vegas, they just keep chugging, man.
And they do it at 2:59, too.
Yeah.
That could have been done 2 days ago.
Could have been done 2 days ago, but that's not Vegas.
No.
Right? If you want to be on the Strip, you got to pop.
That's
exactly what the Golden Knights do. Exactly. You want a show? We'll give you a show. And that's exactly what they supplied. So Vegas was active. Carolina was active. They obviously acquired Jake Gensel, and then they trade for Evgeny Kuznetsov, who had been placed on waivers by Washington.
So Washington eats half of his salary. He's got another year on his deal. Uber talented, well-documented issues off the ice.
Yep. But was great in that cup run. Yeah, great in that cup run.
You hope that if he's okay, if he's actually in a good spot mentally and physically, Carolina's a better team with him on it. Now, if he's not, because he can, this is where I wonder where the structure of Rod Brind'Amour and the lack of it with Evgeny Kuznetsov, who's going to win that battle?
Well, it's going to be a game of chicken, and I think they're banking on Rod Brind'Amour obviously winning it, dragging Kuznetsov into the fight. But when they won that cup, that was Barry Trotz, who was his coach. And Trotz is a player's coach. I think Brindamore's a player's coach, but he's demanding, right? Like he is demanding. But Trotz was demanding. So Kuznetsov has done it before. The thing is, that was 6 years ago.
Right.
Like that cup run, that's a long time ago. He's not the player he was. He's not going to get back to that level. But I guess they're assuming, or they're hoping, at 50% of the cap hit for this year and next, if he comes alive and he meets whatever expectations are put forth by Brindamore,
half.
He's a really talented player. So it seems like Carolina in the East, Vegas in the West. Those are the two teams that said, screw it, we're going to do this, and we'll give up whatever we got to give up, and we're going to come in and get whoever we can get.
Yeah.
Those are the two big winners,
Correct
so to
me if
speak,
I'm
in
wrong.
terms of action.
Did we hear Phil Kessel's name come across the wire?
I don't think Phil got good news. I think he had to sign before 3, right?
Right.
I don't believe that happened.
Oh.
I don't believe that happened. Do we have MJ?
Yeah.
Here's Mike Johnson, our TSN hockey analyst. I don't know if you heard that. Any news on Phil?
Yeah, that's what I heard as well, that he had to sign by 3 and he had not come to an agreement. So it looks like they could sign him and he could play the rest of the season now, but he can't play in the playoffs because he didn't sign prior to the deadline. So it looks like, his time in the playoffs anyways is done. And whether that means his time in the NHL probably also means that, unfortunately, it is also probably over.
Yeah. Probably the end of the road for Phil. He gave it a shot. I'm sure he put a lot of effort in. He tried to get back into it.
Part of me wanted him to.
I want to see Phil.
Yeah, I mean, it's great content.
I love Phil
It's
Kessel.
him. Like, I don't know. Part of me wanted him to just find a home there.
Yeah. Get Phil back in the league. Please, like the Hertl brothers. Just let him get your mail. Let him get your mail. So, Johnny, Vegas active, Carolina active. Like, are those the two? I don't know if you would classify them as winners, but did they steal the show, so to speak?
Well, I mean, certainly Vegas with what they did, and at the buzzer, the Hertl thing. It's fun. It's fun because no one talked about it. No one was speculating that Tomas Hertl and his 6 years remaining would go to Vegas of all places. It just seems so crazy. And they get Hannafin, and I like Mantha. And even though they're not playing that well, they're not in a great spot in the standings. Probably, even money that they play one of the top seeds in the Central or the Pacific if they make the playoffs. And I think they will make the playoffs. But their roster is so deep now. And yes, I understand, guys might be hurt. Martinez on the injured list and Stone's on the injured list. But when they get all back together, if they're all able to get healthy by the playoffs, that roster is so deep. So, yeah, Vegas for sure, once again, sort of trade shaming the rest of the league. Anyone who says it's hard or we can't do it or we can't risk our futures or we can't trade Fraser Minton or Ethan Cowan or a first rounder or whatever, Vegas would suggest that you can. It's risky and you have to be bold, but it's doable. That was amazing. Certainly Carolina, Gensel, and the fact that they gave up, prospects that were not their best prospects and a first-round pick that's only a first-rounder if they get to the final, that was a pretty astute trade. And I like the Kuznetsov signing or waiver claim, whatever it is, trade, because if he is, I heard you guys talking about it, if he becomes anything, not even much better than what he was earlier this year in Washington, he's still going to be an upgrade on Jack Drury in Carolina for the second line. And the one other team that, I don't know if they won it, but they were busy and they're very different, Colorado. You think about, they've been looking for the Kadri replacement. They do the Byram Middlestad swap after they trade for Walker, get rid of Johansson. They've signed Trennan and Duhaime. Like, they look all of a sudden really different when Nichushkin's back and healthy and Lekkonen's playing and Drouin's been pretty good, and who knows about Landeskog. Not that I'm saying it's going to happen, but it's a possibility. And again, all of a sudden their team looks really different. Even though they're going to have a really tough road, they might be third. They might have to start on the road against Dallas or Winnipeg. But still, with what they've done last couple of years and how good their top players are, there's another team that sort of went, we're going to be uber aggressive and try to better our team right now.
Johnny, was there one team that you were just shocked that they didn't do anything? Or, even they did something you were perplexed as to, like, why did they do that?
Well, can you explain to me the Jersey goalie rotation? So was the idea that they trade for Jake Allen with a little bit of salary retention. He's got another year on his contract. Then they trade for Kaapo Kähkönen out of San Jose, and I guess they want to try him as the goalie of the future. It just seems sort of a bit of a lateral move. I'm not saying Jake Allen's probably not better than the guys they have there now, but Jersey fancy themselves a pretty good team that maybe his year was derailed a bit by injuries. Noodles, can you tell me, if they got Allen Kähkönen starting next year, are you super confident that they're locked in, good to go, we're set in net for a good team and a good deep playoff run? It still feels risky. You're trading to Foley away, but you're still trying to augment your goaltending now. I don't know. Explain that one to me.
What it said to me is that they didn't want to put their young players in the net, Dawes and Akira Schmid. It said, we'll put 2 veteran guys in and see how this unfolds. And if the veteran guys, they can battle for the net, because neither one of them are starters. I think Jake Allen was a starter at some point, and I think Jake Allen's a nice add, but he's a tandem guy. Same thing with Kähkönen, which Kähkönen, obviously you can't look at his stats. He's playing in San Jose, and it's not been great. But if you believe that at least those 2 are NHL goaltenders, what you're doing is slotting the other 2, Nico Dawes and Akira Schmid, in the minors and saying, we want these young guys to not learn on the job. You're going to go to the A, and you're going to play, and you're going to develop down there. So I think that's what the thought process is. If they went big game hunting on Jacob Markstrom and they couldn't get over the line, plan B was not to get, just one guy. It was to flush out and get 2 guys to make sure both young guys can play in the minors, and we don't have to rely on them and put them in a tough spot to fail.
But are those 2 goalies that they got good enough to put Jersey in a good spot next year? Or will they be back here kind of going our goaltending's maybe not quite good enough?
Well,
I just wonder, I can kind of get the philosophy, but I think they want to be good next year. I don't think they want to maybe be good. I think they sort of really expect to be good. I don't know. I don't know if those 2 guys get it done.
Well, here's the other thing. That Kähkönen's going to be a UFA. He's 27. So what they did is
the tryout for 2 months.
Exactly. So you've got one spot open for sure next year. Now, if it doesn't work out, you can move past him. Maybe it's a scenario where you continue to go big game hunting. Maybe Boston decides, what happens.
Ullmark's available.
Now you've got Jake Allen and Ullmark, and you allow those 2 kids to continue to grow in the minors again. They're both 23 years old. So you give yourself, really what it comes down to is if this was plan B or plan C for Tom Fitzgerald, plan A seemed to be Markstrom. They couldn't get it done. Now it's, okay, we're going to go to Allen and Kähkönen. That's somewhat of a short-term fix for the rest of this season. We'll assess it in the offseason if the guys that are playing in front of him, if what they're going to do down the stretch here, because there's no guarantee they're getting in either.
No, I don't think they're going to get in this year, but I guess I suppose that. Did you guys read this? There's some reports out there that Ullmark was very close to going to LA, and it just sort of fell apart right at 3 p.m.
That's huge.
That would have been something, because LA with Ullmark, a system goalie with a wickedly tight system in front of him, that would have made LA so scary for Edmonton in the first round.
Yeah.
Like that. Now, no disrespect to Cam Talbot, who's had some pretty good moments this year, I think LA is way more vulnerable than if they had a top flight goaltender. That would have been, that we won. I forced that one over the finish line. I don't let that one fall apart before we get there.
Well, and that goes both ways, right? We just spent the last 3 days talking about Elias Lindholm in Vancouver. You don't want me anymore? What is Ullmark thinking? Boston's basically saying, Swayman's our guy. I don't care what you do between now and game 1. Swayman's playing. And maybe that was happening anyway, and probably should.
He probably knew that anyway.
But he would have been obviously they went to him, or someone went to him and said, hey, LA's really kicking tires, and we're trying to move in that direction. Ullmark's well aware that Boston was more than willing to move on him. And, does that have an impact on his mentality, the way he plays, the room? I don't know.
What would that deal have looked like? We could speculate, but does that involve PLD?
Why would Boston take Pierre? Why would anybody take Pierre-Luc Dubois right now?
Well,
after what they've seen out of him.
We just talked about Kuznetsov. The scary part, I was in Calgary last week, and I was talking to a scout, and we were actually talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois. And it was interesting of what he said. He goes, I was sent to watch him several times over the last couple years because he said, we knew he wanted out of Winnipeg, all of that. He said there were nights where the guy was just the best player on the ice, and it was hands down. He was just motivated. He was a bully because he's big, score, he could do anything. He said there were other nights where you just could not find him, and you knew he was uninterested. So he said in the end, his reports, he went back as not interested. He wrote back NI, not interested for our organization at this time. But, he's a guy, maybe in the right situation, can you get him over the line? It's the Kuznetsov argument.
Right. And Boston in particular, they have a lot of faith in their culture and their room and their leadership that you bring this guy in, he'll snap out of it because Marchand won't accept it. And McAvoy
maybe
won't
LA
accept
retains and he becomes Kuznetsov. He becomes the $5 million player, and then he doesn't have to be quite so consistent at that. But that would have been interesting because that would have changed the dynamic out west for sure. I don't know what the follow-up move could have been for Boston, but certainly out west, that would have been LA with a top-flight goalie would be. I would not want any part of them in the first round.
Right.
Yeah.
The four Canadian teams we know or believe are going to the playoffs: the Leafs, Jets, Oilers, Canucks, all active in different ways. How much better do you feel about the four collective Canadian tickets chasing the Stanley Cup this year today compared to where you were maybe a month and a half ago?
So you feel much better about Winnipeg. We'll start there.
Yep.
We know how good they are. Their defense really didn't need much help. They went and got a support depth guy in Colin Miller, but they had some holes up front, and they went and addressed them very specifically. Needed a centerman. Sean Monahan was snapped up early. They needed another top six winger. They needed sort of instant offense shooter, Tyler Toffoli, who has done that. He's on his fourth Canadian team, very comfortable playing in Canada, that kind of market. And they seem really poised to be very deep, very solid. So I feel better. I like where Winnipeg was at. I like them even more today. Edmonton, I guess I like Adam Henrique. I think he really does give them flexibility. I don't know if I picked them to win the cup, so I obviously like them to begin. They didn't change their defenseman, so I guess I like them the same I did a month and a half ago. I like Henrique. It's a smart move, but I'm still a wee bit leery of Darren, CC on your second and third pairs right side against really good opponents. That's a concern. They believe in the strength of their system and team play, and we'll see if that'll be enough. But I'm not sure it's going to be. That'll be the one concern for me. Van, Lindholm was the big add, and he was almost a big subtraction. That one is crazy. To think that they roll out the welcome mat for you, and then maybe they're going to take it out from under you right after that. They got to sort out exactly what they're going to be, but some depth guys. But I still think they got to sort out how they're going to maximize all their rosters. And then the Leafs guys, I can appreciate as individual players how Lyubushkin, Edmondson, Dewar all bring something a little bit different that Toronto doesn't have. They all bring something that might fit a role that Toronto could use, but it feels like Toronto is so marginally better, not significantly better, and I think that's the big difference, right? If they could have been a little bit more focused on one big defenseman, and whether that was Tanev or never going to work, whatever, somebody else that would be a bit more impactful than spreading it around over three different players. Because they have guys that were sort of similar, but not quite as good, but maybe quite as good or better at some things and not as good at others. It seems like, definitely on the margins kind of players, but I just wonder if they would have been better served going big after one specific, like Tyler Toffoli. What did he go for? A second and a third?
Yeah.
Right? Think about the 5-7 picks they used to get Dewar, Edmondson, and Lyubushkin under contract. Could they have dumped all five into Jersey to get Tyler Toffoli? I think they could have. Probably would have worked. Mm-hmm. Which way would they be better? I don't know the answer, but it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like always with the Leafs, we won't know until
right. Proof will be in the results.
Yeah, exactly. Like once they get to the playoffs, like Tree Living, his sales pitch as to why they did what they did, and they made 3 trades. It's not like they sat on their hands and did nothing. They did bring in players that are going to play for them. But his pitch basically was, the guys in the room are going to have to drag us there, and I think that's pointed directly at the best players. But what will be interesting to see with him here, with Shanahan still here, ownership still being what they are, albeit Keith Pelley coming in. Like, if this doesn't work and we're at the 8th rendition of why it didn't work and talking about Matthews and Marner and Nylander, like, is it finally going to change?
Yeah.
It's not with Matthews and Willie, obviously, and Tavares is likely coming back next year. I mean, he's got 1 year left on his deal. But I don't know. And that's we don't have an answer for that right now, Johnny, but if he's putting the emphasis on, you guys got to do it. If they don't do it, then what's the payback for that? Or what's the blowback, I should say, if it doesn't happen this time?
So this is probably not a fair analogy, but, you know, the Leafs have been a little bit the victim of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, because how many years have sort of 2 of the top 4 teams been in their division? There was Tampa and Boston forever. Now it's Florida and Boston again. And are they like the Winnipeg Jets?
Yes.
The Smythe division in the 80s, like, we got to go through Calgary and Edmonton. There's no chance. And you know, they do have a very tough road. Now, this year, West, Central, Pacific, they're just as tough as the Atlantic. But they're in tough. I mean, we've seen them play Boston twice, so maybe there's some recency bias. It doesn't look great. Florida beat them last year and kind of ran them out of the series. Doesn't look like a great option there. I don't know if it doesn't go well early, Hayes. Is it an indictment of the entire thing? I don't know. But at some point, I get, 8 years, like, what are you going to do? Like, at some point it is. It's not going to work. But I don't know. That's just, they're in tough. But it comes back, and it's sort of simple to say, but, Nylander, Marner, Matthews, they've all been good in the playoffs. You look at their numbers, you look at the goals they scored, they've had some big series and big moments. Still feels like, relative to the regular season, they're not as good in the playoffs as they are in the regular season. Is that fair to say? Relative to the regular season.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? Doesn't mean they're not good, but they're not as good as they are in the regular season. And I think that's the one spot you can take it. They got some new players. They're going to shift around, figure out who plays where, who's healthy, who does what the goalie's going to look like. As long as the goalie doesn't, fall completely on his face. Like, at some point, you want to see them not only as good, but better than they were in the regular season. And if they do that, it's an entirely different team.
Yep.
It's an entirely different proposition, because that would be more than enough to get them through Boston. Because that's how good those guys are, if they can get it to that level.
Yep. Exactly. And if and when they do that, and then something, fails this team,
then it's a different conversation.
Totally different. They have all the right in the world to storm into Tree Living's office and say, you better help us out here. Like, we're pulling our weight. Go get a goalie. Go get a defenseman. Go get depth. Whatever. Get us a new coach. Whatever it happens to be.
Right.
But they don't have that right now, because they haven't earned that right. But as we've said countless times, that's the beauty of sports. They have another chance in 6 weeks. And, it's their reputation. They have to own it, but you can always change it. And they go on a run. That's exactly what will happen.
It's wild, Hayes. I was in Boston, right? They were celebrating the 2011 winning team. And, you're kind of thinking back to that year, the great run, beating Vancouver in the finals, and how cool that was. A great series. The year before, 2010, first round, they lost a 3-0 series lead and a 3-0 Game 7 lead to Philly. And nobody talks about that. Nobody even thinks about that with that group. Because every spring you have a chance to rewrite history in a positive win. And that's the thing for Toronto, these Leafs. Like, it's been obviously a tough go in the playoffs for this very good team. If they get to the third round, let's say the third round, I'm not going to make them get to the final. If they get to the third round, literally all those losses will be forgotten. They'll be like, yeah, it was just part of the process learning to get to the team we are now. That's how they would be remembered, and not for the negative. That's the opportunity they have, 6 weeks from now.
Yeah. We'll get there. Now that we're past the trade deadline, that's exactly what it is. Jockeying for position, trying to get healthy, try to pop at the right time, and the playoffs will be here before we know it. Good stuff, Johnny. Thank you for doing this, buddy. All right, boys. Noodles, you're a hero. Getting home, red eye, doing the show all the way to 7. Impressive.
Crazy.
Impressive stuff.
Grinding.
Hey, you're not bad either, but Noodles, impressive.
Oh, good.
Very impressive. Very
We're
impressive.
limping to the end.
We'll
Just
get
coasting.
there. We'll get there.
He said I was going to be Pete Rose.
No,
Remember Pete Rose fell asleep on the panel?
extra innings on Fox. With a bow tie on, man. He couldn't do it, dude. I think he was going to 14 innings on the West Coast. It was like a Giants game. He's like, I'm dying here.
I got to look that up in a YouTube clip.
Petey Rose, man.
He's Ryan Rashad in between hits. Just taking a quick cat nap in the chair.
Exactly. All right, Johnny, have a good weekend.
All right, boys. Have a good weekend.
Mike Johnson, our TSN hockey analyst. Trade deadline brought to you by your Ontario Subaru dealers. Subaru Confidence in Motion. Darren Dreger still to come. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. Mail-in in Fridays brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. From tip-offs to tie bites and puck drops to pizza, BP's elite lineup of apps, wings, and ice-cold beers. Always dialed in for game time. Hustle into your local BP tonight. Tradecentre has officially come and gone. And everything worked out well. Everyone was lots of great energy today. Everyone was having a blast. And there were trades. It wasn't like record-breaking or anything like that, but there were trades.
There should almost be a rule. The week leading up to it, it's like you put the trade into like a holding pattern.
Right.
Say we're going to announce it on Friday at noon.
Goes into the hole, basically.
Yeah,
it's
it goes into the shoe.
Yes, you go in there and no one can know it, and
Yeah.
it comes out. We scatter it throughout the day, Trade Center.
That
I like
way
that
it make
idea.
it exciting because I feel like all these trades just happen leading up to today.
That's generally what's been happening in the last few years. Here's our TSN hockey insider, Darren Dreger. What did you make it today in terms of the amount of activity? About what you were expecting or what, Dregs?
No, you know what? Actually, it was a little busier than I was expecting. Just given everything that had gone on to that point. Hold on.
We're good.
Sorry, I had to,
No problem.
I had to clear my throat.
We're good. We're good.
The Gensel deal last night, we were hoping that was going to drag into today, obviously. But when that one went down, then we're like, all right, well, not that, there was chopped liver left, but you had Tiger Tivoli and you had some other interesting elements. And then you had, the big bomb of Tomas Hertl going to the Vegas Golden Knights, which nobody had on their bingo card. But look, if it gets any busier, then you guys aren't going to have the time that you have to, offer opinion, have some, chuckles, the skit that you had with the O-Dog, the quiz champion, all of that. It's, part of the entertainment of the day is making sure that we can get a sufficient amount of shenanigans involved too, right?
That's very true. We're up at 8 a.m. and deals don't come in till like 12:30, 1 o'clock. That's generally when it starts.
How many years ago was it when Gino was running around in the parking lot chasing those emus or whatever?
Yeah, like llamas.
Llamas? Is that what it was? Llamas?
Yeah, that'd be 7 or 8 years ago now.
That's at least that, and that was almost the day. That was the day where I almost said, okay, I got to get into a different business.
Yeah.
Because now, number one, and Bob and I have joked about this a little bit, we obviously took ourselves too seriously back in the day too, right? The trade breakers are back there and, this is heavy lifting. This is serious news stuff. And we're watching Gino run around the parking lot. And then we had one year we had all the big mascots come in. And it's just been one thing after another before finally, whether it was a couple of years, 3 years, 4 years ago, whatever, Bob and I just said, all right, you can't fight City Hall here. Let's just stay in our lane and just do what we do in the back and let everything else kind of unfold in front of us.
You got to have it, man.
Yeah.
You got to have it. It's entertainment.
Yeah.
It's entertainment.
It is.
And that's exactly what was happening with Gino when Hedge and Marty.
Oh, the
legendary stuff.
it was like T-shirt can.
T-shirt can.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That just smoked Hedge. But yeah, it's listen. Like you said, there was activity. The Hertl thing was substantial. And we've talked about Vegas a lot, and it's a copycat league. Dregs, we always say that about whoever wins the Stanley Cup. Well, Vegas won the Cup, and they're actually more active this year than they were even leading up to the deadline last year.
Yeah.
Is this a scenario with everything they're doing, how active they are, who they acquire, what they do with long-term IR? Are other teams around the league, do they have an appreciation for it, or do they have a hate-on for it?
Well, I'm sure there are general managers who maybe don't have an appreciation, but a high level of jealousy. Imagine being in a market where, basically every player wants to play in, and not just for tax reasons and the fact that it's a cool city, but the reality, you've got an owner and a management group that is like, we're all in every single year. I mean, that's what we do. And we keep waiting for that cycle to catch up to the Vegas Golden Knights, and it has to, I think, at some point. But, then you see a deal like Tomas Hertl from the San Jose Sharks, who's got lots of term left on his contract. So you've got a combination of things here that Kelly McCrimmon was able to take advantage of. I think he felt really strong about his week going into today. And had a brief exchange with him yesterday, and he's like, look, I mean, Noah Hannafin, we targeted him. We thought that he'd be a nice ad. Wasn't convinced we were going to get him. Before that, Anthony Mantha, they were intrigued by Mantha. Again, think he's a good fit. But then as Kelly McCrimmon acknowledged to his local media in Vegas, I just saw some of that transcript. He's been working on Hertl since I think before he got injured. So you're talking about early in 2024. So it's not like, Vegas woke up this morning and said, okay, you know what? We're going to make a big splash and here's what we're going to do. No, this is stuff that every hockey operations department across the National Hockey League forecasts, right? And you go through your pro scouts, submit a laundry list of players that you think might be attainable, and you work through it as a group. The one thing for me that Vegas has going for them is what I just said, and that's that players want to play there. So even though it seems like it can get dangerous at times when you're rolling out your draft picks, your first-round picks, and all of that, end of the day, as long as the salary cap continues to increase and you manage your roster the way that the Vegas Golden Knights do, you're always going to be able to transition. So I think that there's probably a hefty amount of jealousy in other hockey operations departments across the league in how they're able to do this on almost on an annual basis now.
Well, Dregs does, when you look at it, all I hear from other people, especially in the league, is like, well, eventually this organization, like the cupboards are going to be bare, it's going to crash and burn type of thing. Like at some point, I mean, they've been all in it.
It will, Noodles.
I know.
It will at some point. It has to.
Yeah. But is Pittsburgh going through that? But that's a cycle of older players, technically. Like I feel like Vegas won't allow those players to be around.
Right, they bring in younger, better players,
like
and then they start a new era.
That's the difference where, you see some legacy players that stay with certain organizations and people make these decisions and go, okay, well, that guy's been with us, like, let's build around it, where I feel like, George McPhee, Kelly McCrimmon are like, we need to, like, we see a decline in that player. We're going to we'll move them before that. Like, they've been proactive on a lot of things. And there will be some where they hit or miss, but ultimately, like, is there a cycle in Vegas where there is going to be a 3 or 4 a year where it's like, this is ugly, or are they ahead of it? I feel like they're ahead of it.
Right. So correct me if I'm wrong here, and I should have thought of this earlier. There's just so much going on over the course of the day. So the draft pick that Vegas sent to San Jose is the pick that would have originally went to Calgary, right? That sliding pick in the Hannafin deal. Mm-hmm. So that's because now Calgary gets an unprotected pick, correct, in 26.
Yeah.
And that was interesting. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's how that all transpired.
Right.
But if, like, nobody leaves a first-round draft pick unprotected anymore. It doesn't happen. It really doesn't. But that, again, is the swagger of Kelly McCrimmon and the Vegas Golden Knights, whereby they're going, okay, Tampa Bay, you've been dealing on Noah Hannafin for how long? Well, you haven't made the deal yet. So obviously it's not a deal that the Calgary Flames can live with. So McCrimmon scoops in there and said, okay, well, what do you need for Noah Hannafin? Well, here's what we need. Okay, done. Okay, but I might need that first pick in 2025 because I'm going to try and add another player. I might add another forward. Well, it turns out that forward is a hockey trade in Hertl from the San Jose Sharks. But, the convincing slide was with Conroy and Calgary, okay, we're going to leave that pick in 26 unprotected. Well, I don't know. I mean, what if Vegas does go on a slide that we don't think they will, but if they do, that's not a bad deal for Calgary, is it? All of a sudden now you've got a top 10 or a top 15 pick. So the beauty of the Vegas Golden Knights is, the support of ownership and how aggressive management McCrimmon and McPhee are. They just find a way every single year.
Yeah, they do. With Darren Dreger, our TSN Hockey Insider, and you're aware of this market in Toronto. Everyone's going to have a different reaction to what the Leafs did. They acquired a few players, a couple of defensemen, and a depth forward today.
Yeah,
certainly not anywhere close to what we saw from them last year, where they basically stole the show. They've been more moves than anyone else in the league. What do you make of the Leafs' approach here, and what does it tell you about how they really feel about their team, and how much heavy lifting could happen in the summer if need be?
Well, we don't know how they feel about their team. They're going to say all the right things. We're confident, we're this, we're that, but that confidence is always tested by what happens in the playoffs, and there'll be no different this year. I heard Brad Treliving in his media availability, and then I heard him subsequently on radio, and, he talked about how, our offensive leaders, our big guys, are going to have to do that. And they feel pretty good about the support help that not only they brought in, but they have. And we know the class here that we're talking about. And, you're talking about your certainly bottom six, but, what are we like? Probably forwards 8, 9 through 12. And then they like the fact that they were able to not necessarily shore up their blue line, but improve their blue line with Lyubushkin and Edmondson. I know that there was some, kind of negativity around Edmondson in that trade, and I don't understand that. I'm not an analytics guy, and I'm not going to hop on that bandwagon. I don't care what the data or the analytics say about this guy. I just think that you need proven players who aren't afraid to get into the muck like we saw against the Boston Bruins last night. And Joel Edmondson can do that. And, Connor Dewar, he might not be the sexiest ad that Leafs fans could have envisioned, but he's an honest, hardworking player. He provides some depth up the middle. He's going to help on the penalty kill. At the end of the day, what is going to matter is that Toronto's top-end guys match whoever they're playing, Boston, Florida, their top-end guys. And then you hope that some of the other pieces that, go into that support cast find a way to make an impact. So based on the hand that Brad Treliving has, I think he did okay.
Yeah, and, they're going to go to the playoffs. They're likely playing Boston, maybe Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, either team. But
I'm just not convinced it's just Boston and that's it. Like, I still think there's a dogfight there. And even if the Leafs, if one of them stubs their toe, like it's going to be a fight. Like the three teams, the Leafs are behind. I think the Leafs are behind. Is it 8 points?
Yeah,
or
they're
7?
8 points. 8 or more than that now.
It's a bit of a stretch, but either way, those top two, they're separated by 1 point and one game in hand, and they play each other like you said.
They play
Brian,
two more
twice.
times, home and away, Florida, Boston.
We could all be talking about, hey, they didn't have a good week against Boston, and and all of a sudden they're playing Florida.
Yeah.
And, so you're not going to just game plan to play against Boston in the playoffs. You need to maximize what your group is. And I don't disagree with Tree. I look at it and if you're going to go deep in the playoffs, yes, a depth player is going to chip in here or there. You're going to have an unsung hero one night that scores an overtime goal. It's going to be your top players that deliver and goaltending. Which, I mean, we could have three different opinions on goalies of who's going to start. Martin Jones has played the most. He's got 62 games of playoff experience. Joseph Woll has 4.
Yeah. He didn't play. He didn't have a great week. I mean, it wasn't his problem alone, but he wasn't great against Boston. And yet Samsonov's been really good recently, yet you can't look past, that pretty significant chunk of the season where he wasn't even with the team.
Yeah. He was on waivers.
He was literally on waivers.
Yeah.
There's a lot up in the air, man. We'll see. All right, Dregs. Great stuff, man. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, you bet. Stellar work today, fellas. Thank you.
You too. There it is. Darren Dreger at TSN Hockey Insider. Okay, every day we announce a current or former Maple Leaf player. And then on Fridays, you have a chance to call in and name all 5 players. This week, we're giving away tickets to see the Leafs play the Hurricanes March 16th. Plus, we're throwing in a $250 Vanilla Visa prepaid card. Vanilla Visa prepaid cards are available for purchase at Petro Canada. Today's player of the day is Ron Francis.
Oh.
Ronnie Francis, 416-870-1050. 416-870-1050. 416-870-1050. First one in with all 5 Maple Leafs named. You're going to see Leafs Canes, plus picking up a $250 Vanilla Visa prepaid card. Ron Francis is your Maple Leaf player of the day. Come back and recap what was a crazy, wild week and really a wild day today as well. We'll look ahead to what should be a fun weekend. OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, Mailing In Fridays, brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. From tip-offs to tie bites and puck drops to pizza, BP's elite lineup of apps, wings, and ice-cold beers. Always dialed in for game time. Hustle into your local BP tonight. And you got Leafs Habs tomorrow night. The Raptors, they did cover the number last night. We talked about that yesterday. Could they cover the 10.5? Technically, they covered.
But
Still lost to Phoenix, but
yeah.
covered the number. And Joey Votto's going to be in camp. He's going to be in Dunedin tomorrow. Tiger Woods, you see he's not playing at the Players next week. Like, what is Tiger doing?
He should retire.
Honestly, it's to a point where I don't think something's up. Like,
Yeah.
he obviously doesn't trust he can play, and you know, I would assume he'll be at Augusta. I'm guessing he'll be there. But if you're not going to play at the Arnie Palmer, which is going on right now at Bay Hill, or at the Players, you're not ever going to.
What you're doing
play
is teasing people. They're waiting for you to show up, and then it's like, no, I'm not there. Not there.
Well, and remember, he kept saying, I think I can play every month, one tournament a month. Well, here you go. And like, where are you, man?
Not there.
He's not playing. He's not going to play in March because if he's not playing at Bay Hill, he's not playing the Players. We won't see him again until Augusta. And again, I assume he'll be there. But Tiger not playing at the Players next week. Joey Votto, we'll see. I'm curious to see what Votto's got. You know, he's a Toronto guy, left-handed bat. He's been, by all accounts, going kind of stir-crazy, not playing. Like, he's doing all these videos and stuff.
Yeah, he's a unique
He's
person.
a different cat, Joey. Yeah. But he loves baseball. He's a baseball lifer. He's a great player. Someone sent me a stat. I think he's only like 25 hits behind Larry Walker for the most hits all time for a Canadian.
So there you go. There's something for you.
If he makes the team, if they end up giving him a roster spot and he ends up breaking camp with the Jays, you know, and he plays a few months, you have to believe he can get to 26 hits.
So next week or the following week, we got to have a Jerry's percentage that this guy is on the team.
Yeah.
I think he makes it.
No.
I don't even know what to say anymore. I don't know. I mean, I think, I hope it's not them just saying, all right, you know, gratuitous. I do wonder why they didn't invite him 3 weeks ago or a month ago. Like, why is he late into camp? If you were going to invite him, why didn't you invite him already?
Unless they're seeing something else with injuries or something like that.
It's possible that there's something else they're seeing that they're like, we got to rectify this. But nonetheless, it's going to cause a stir, man. Joey Votto will be in camp. All right, there you go. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes today. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in, too, all day on Tradecentre. It was an amazing day. A lot of fun here at TSN. And it's going to be a fun weekend.
Yeah.
So we're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy your weekends. We're back Monday at
4 p.m.
We'll chat then.